Hi, I'm Emerson Morley, and I'm a junior at Los Gatos High School and a national world news editor at El Gato.
I'm Lucy Holland. I'm also a junior at Los Gatos High School, and I'm a culture editor for the El Gato newspaper. So today we're kind of thinking of talking about how, with the semester coming to a close after a full semester of online learning, and the district sending out the Healthy Teen Survey for this semester, we are thinking of talking about some of the effects of this online learning environment on the mental health of the students.
I think, Lucy, the thing that kind of stands out predominantly over this semester has been the realization of a lot of students that when they lose the stability and the constant of school, because, school's always been there. You wake up on a Monday and you've got school. You have it for 5 days a week. It's what you have. That's what you do. You spend your Sundays catching up, and then you go and do it again. And when you remove that constant from a lot of people, consistency is a form of comfort. And so when you lose that, I think a lot of people panicked initially, and probably are still in a state of panic right now because it's tough.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm a very routine based person. And personally for me, it was so difficult, especially in March when everything was initially canceled, losing that routine completely and not having the waking up at the same time every day, going to school at the same time every day, going to practice at the same time every day, coming home, and then being able to have some freedom at home to do what I pleased instead of having to create my routine at home, especially personally, I don't have a first period. So I wake up at a different time every single day of the week. I have practices at a different time every single day of the week. And it's so hard for me to sit down and put out a to-do list or a schedule for me to do things because I don't have any of that consistency.
Yeah. I would say you never find yourself up until now creating a routine from scratch. If you moved across the country, you would still have a routine like, hey, I'm going to get up, I'm going to make my coffee, and then I'm going to do this. But it's so difficult to take the initiative and be like, I need to literally take what I previously knew, throw it out the window, and then establish the baseline of what I need. And I think self-care was already not really a thing that existed for a lot of people before this. And now especially, it's like, I don't even know where to put that. Where do I put that in my routine? Because every day is so different, because a Zoom call is so easy that you feel like you can just shove away the care that you need to give yourself in order to stay sane. And now that we have another 3 weeks, I don't know, another allotted amount of time to be extra indoors, I think we're going to see a lot more stress start to bubble up.
Yeah. And it's coming back to the routine aspect. Before going to school, I would wake up an hour before school, I would shower, I would do my hair, I'd get clothes ready. And now it's some days I'll decide to do that. Some days if I wake up on time and I'm feeling energized, I'll get up and I'll put real clothes on. But then it's so much easier, and I find myself slipping back into just waking up, grabbing a frozen waffle and turning my camera off for my first class and sitting and eating my breakfast and being half asleep. And
Right.
I think that's another one of the hardest things about staying engaged in class. It's so easy to turn your camera off or hold your phone up behind your screen and just completely tune out what's happening in class because you're in your bedroom, or maybe in an office or your living room, you're at your house instead of in a classroom where it's if you're not paying attention, a teacher can see you not paying attention, and it almost forces you to pay attention. But at home, it's so easy to just slip out of that. And so it's really harder to hold yourself accountable instead of kind of having other people hold you accountable. It's a lot more on the student to do everything because teachers are doing as much as they can. Mm-hmm. And so we really have to do as much as we can too.
Yeah, I think this new way of learning, it feels, the only way I can explain it is very optional. You show up and you're like, the effort to reward that you get out of sitting in class just isn't the way that it was before. And, you couldn't sit in class, our first semester of last year, it's been a long time, of last year, you couldn't sit there in your pajamas with a frozen waffle, drinking coffee and with your hair messed up. You would be ruthlessly judged because that's the world that we live in. But now it's well, why not? It doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want. And I think that leads to kind of two different avenues that you can go down. And that's I I have freedom and I'm going to take advantage of that, or I have freedom and that freedom is what's kind of causing my downfall as a student, because there's nothing reinforcing my routine and keeping me here when it feels like I can just log off and,
Yeah.
head back to bed.
Yeah. And the logging off aspect, I think that's where I'm at mentally also. I've always been a person that loves school, not only just because of the social aspect, seeing my friends every day, seeing my teachers every day, being able to go up and do something, but I've always really enjoyed learning, and I always would take subjects that I enjoyed learning about. And now it's like, it feels like a chore. It feels like something that is, like you said, optional. Like, why am I here doing this if I really don't have to? Because a couple of my classes, I'm able to just kind of do everything without really being in the call. And so sitting there learning seems optional, and it seems like I'm not enjoying it as much, which just is super hard. And that's the idea of school being a chore is just something I've never experienced. And that's been a huge change for me this semester, especially.
Yeah. And I think it's really difficult because when you log on, and I don't know about anybody else, but for me, immediately my like computer fan starts going, and then I'm sitting there and I'm like in my pajamas and I feel gross and like it's nasty and people are loud and it's kind of chaotic, and I have to like turn down the volume and turn it back up, and it's just a really awkward parallel to be in where you're like, sometimes it feels gross. It's like you get a headache from staring at your screen all day, whether or not you have blue light glasses or whatever, or night shift on, you're still going to get that screen headache. I know, like, my neck hurts, and it ends up feeling like a physical toll on your body. It's not just emotional. It's a very like physical experience to have where you're like, wow, this is really, really tough because of how it literally makes you feel in your own skin.
Yeah. And like, I'm a super active person, and going to school every day, I would like park up the hill, walk down to my school, and then our school has so many hills. You're walking around. I would walk up downtown for lunch every day. And then some of my classes, you're not even sitting down the whole time, but it's like waking up, walking 5 feet from my bed to my desk, sitting down for 3 hours, going back in my bed after, and then coming back, sitting down at my desk to do homework. It's like, I feel exhausted by the end of the day and I've done nothing. But just that not being able to get out and work out, or even just go for a walk, like it's hard. And like, it's also losing the motivation to do stuff like that. Like, I remember in March, you would see everyone out at like 3 p.m. going on walks with their families and their dogs. And I would do that too. I would take my dog for a lap around my neighborhood for like a mile or two.
Yeah.
Now it's like, with work piling up and just losing motivation for everything in general. Like, I've always been a person that I get my work done before 10:30 and I go to bed because I like having a full night's sleep. And I am an active person. I'm doing stuff all day. So I get my work done and then I go to bed. But now it's like, I'm starting my work at 7 or 8 and turning it in by midnight, and then waking up and doing the same thing the next day.
Yeah.
It's so sedentary, you know?
And it's also difficult because I think every student right now is having similar experiences, but it's also extremely variable because you have some people who are like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. Like, I can do classes at my own pace and I can like work asynchronously, and people enjoy that independence. And then you have other students who are like, who have ADHD and learning disabilities, or just have trouble focusing on Zoom because it's on your computer, that are falling apart right now because, believe it or not, it's very difficult to learn through a screen. I remember if you first semester freshman year in Spanish watching YouTube videos, and immediately I was like, whatever. It just feels so pointless. You're like, oh, a 20-minute video, or watching a movie in a class, like, this is dumb. So to go from that to transferring our lives onto Zoom calls, it's different for every student, but it's really tough, especially when, I have some learning disabilities, and I think, when I'm on my math calls, I'm like, I sometimes I'll just, look out the window, and then I'm just over here, and I'm like, oh crap, I just missed 5 minutes of instruction. And by the time the class is over, I've spent so much like mental energy staying focused that I put off my homework for a few hours because I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity to do it. So, I think every student's experience is different, but I think somebody has an aspect of struggle no matter who they are.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough to not have any learning disabilities, but even I, like,
Hard.
I'll zone out for 20 minutes
Yeah.
and realize I missed instruction. I'll look at my phone and read articles from the New York Times in the middle of my physics class and then realize I don't know how to do certain equations. And then I miss all this stuff because I can't stay focused. And then it's reaching out to teachers there's this other aspect of it that's so much bigger than just going in a tutorial. And where in class I probably wouldn't have missed what I missed online. And then now I don't have tutorial to go in and ask them questions. And I know teachers are doing the best they can to set up office hours and modules and everything for the extra help that students need. But I'm a very non-confrontational person, and not even just a confrontation, but just reaching out with an email instead of being able to explain and show my paper and show why I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this added level of difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
And where a person, like, I'm already pretty introverted, but like when it comes to teachers, but when another person has more trouble speaking to teachers than I do, it seems like an impossible mountain to climb.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And also for me, I passed a lot of my classes when for the sheer reason that I could go to my teacher and explain, this is who I am, this is why I struggle, you know, this is me as a person. I'm not the dumb slacker that you think I am. Let me introduce myself, explain what I do, explain how I learn. And I've been lucky enough this year it's been tough, but I've communicated a lot with my teachers to make sure they understand my situation. But if somebody, again, like you said, doesn't have the confidence to do that, I think it's so easy to misidentify people and completely take them at face value. And, you know, if you're not turning in assignments or you're doing poorly, the teacher's probably going to be like, ooh, somebody's struggling, like, you know, and they're not coming in, so they don't want to help themselves. But it's a tough situation to be in, especially when you don't want to talk to a teacher, because it's frightening. It's scary to go up there with your paper and say, this is hard for me. Like, that's really scary. So that disconnection and not being able to look somebody in the eye and say, look, this is why I'm having a hard time, that's really difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, forming that connection with your teachers is so important. Even like the first day of school, just meeting them and speaking with them and them getting to know you as a person versus you as a student is so important, because like we're stuck with them for a year, they're stuck with us for a year. Yeah. And teachers, especially at the school, they really do look out for our best interests and they want us to be able to learn. And there's, like you said, just that disconnect right now, because you can't really get to know your teachers personally, because they have 5 classes of 30 kids a week and they have to get to know all these kids over Zoom, and some of them can't even place faces with names because kids don't have to have their cameras on. The teachers can't even know what you look like or what type of humor you have or how you learn and stuff like that. And it's just, having that disconnect means just that other degree of kind of a non-personal learning experience that makes it that much harder.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the topic of returning back to school has come up a lot because everybody thinks about it. It's on our minds all the time. And everybody kind of has a different take and a different opinion. And even Elgato, we've talked about this before as being a possible editorial topic, whatever. But we've had these discussions and we've taken polls and been like, if you had the option to return back to school, would you? And it's been overwhelmingly all over the map, because everybody has a different value system. And the majority of people that we saw in our small class discussion were like, you know, I'd rather suck it up, push through, and just for the greater good, just stay home, make sure it clears up, and then go back when it is like safe, instead of doing an awkward, difficult hybrid situation, which we should talk about soon. But, you know, I think there was a couple of us in the class that kind of poked our heads up and were like, it is worth noting that a lot of people in writing English driven classes like this are extremely talented and very good at, you know, interpersonal communication and are really good students. And I don't think that, you know, we're properly representing the community who might not be getting into college because of a year like this. I have plenty of friends with ADHD and visual processing disorders and really big struggles right now that are heightened tenfold by this type of format. And, you know, as much as like the greater good is amazing, you know, kids need futures. Kids, we need our futures. We need to go to college. And we want to go to college. We have dreams, we have goals, we have aspirations. And that is so incredibly difficult to achieve. And not only to achieve, we want to get there with the best of our abilities. And that is so difficult right now in this environment. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think just kind of what we also talked about in that discussion in our class, there's no win-win scenario for anyone. There's no lose-lose scenario for anyone either. It's always going to be one group is benefiting, one group is losing out, or maybe that's just the benefits and the losses are all over the charts. Everyone is split, you know. For you, you'd so much rather go back to school because you struggle in those courses. And then for me, like my future is based off my water polo career, and I'm most likely not going to have a season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I'm coming to terms with. But then like more of my classes also, like I'm struggling in my classes, and like I'm a person that I haven't had a lot of struggles in my classes because I am a very, like I said, I really enjoy school and just kind of everything swarming together. I would love to go back to school, but also kind of that greater good aspect. If other people need to go to school more than I do, I don't mind staying home. And I think that's kind of what some people are struggling to see, that there are people that deserve and need to go to school so much more than people that are doing all right, you know, because this is, like you said, it's so much harder on some people than it is on other people. And I think people just need to get back into their heads what a compromise is, you know. There's people that really, really need to go to school, and then there's also teachers that really, really can't go to school. Teachers that are very high risk, that if they go to school, they could die or their families could die. And we need to look at that. There are lives on the line here, but there's also futures on the line.
Yeah.
So there's never going to be a perfect scenario. And we just need to create a line of dialogue for people to be able to talk about what they want their scenario to be and what they need their scenario to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, looking into the future with, you know, we have hospitals all over the country preparing for the vaccine, and you have the UK going into their stage 3 trials. And I think they're the ones leading right now with getting the vaccine out, and looking to that as where we're hopefully going to end up going in the future. Hybrid learning is also a scenario that we're starting to hear about and learn about. And I think we all have very clear concerns about that type of situation, because it might feel like an awkward moment where you go in person and it feels kind of useless because like you're only going 1 or 2 days a week and it feels kind of funky, or you might mix up your schedules, and being in cohorts is weird because, you know, like you have the same people, and I fear that it might feel just as demoralizing as being online because of how dystopian it feels. Like it doesn't feel real. Just like our last few weeks at school back in March, yeah, with nobody was touching door handles. The doors were open. We had the hand sanitizer everywhere and posters on the walls, and it felt like a bad sci-fi novel. It felt weird. And I am afraid of going back to school and seeing everyone be like, wow, this still sucks. And then I think you get another layer of struggle with students there who feel like this was supposed to make it better and it's not getting better. The toll of that might be worse.
Yeah, and I think that's just also another thing about needing student input on what a hybrid model could look like. Because I know there's some schools that do it only for a couple classes. There's some schools that do it only a couple days. Some schools that do only a couple grades, you know, and it's really important that students do research, faculty does research, the school board does research, and we talk to each other. We figure out what's going to be good and what's going to be safe.
Yeah.
And like you said, that dystopian feeling in March, it's also just something that there's just this feeling of uncertainty in the whole world right now. No one really knows what's going to happen. No one really knows what the future is going to look like. And everything is weird and dystopian right now. Pandemic has become a common use in our vernacular English, where a year ago today, that would have been nowhere in our language. And so I think it is just another thing that everyone has heard a million people say this year, but you just have to get used to it. It's going to be weird. It's going to be hard. And a hybrid model might end up being worse than an online model, but we have to kind of take these experiments and see if they work, see if they help. If they don't help, we do something else. And I think it's, people are looking for hard answers right now, and nobody has hard answers.
Yeah, they don't
People
exist.
are just doing the best they can, and we're going to try things. They might not work. Then we can try other things to just do what's best to keep people safe and to keep people as happy as possible.
Yeah.
You know, to the aspect of mental health, it's really, yes, school is important. Yes, going to college is important, but mental health is so much more important. Their suicide rates have skyrocketed this year. And that's just a horrible statistic to hear, but it's also something that kind of wakes you up to realize that communication is also so important. Reaching out to people you love or your friends or your family, and just making it known that while we're all going through this crazy time, just focus on getting through it. That might not mean getting your A's in your classes. That might not mean playing your sports to the best of your ability. It just means getting through it. And I think that's what everyone is at right now.
Yeah.
Get through it to see the other side, you know?
I think you hit it on the head. It's, in the end, it's going to come down to communication. And if we're going to talk about, you know, the risk of student lives, we need to talk about the risk of teacher lives. And if we're going to talk about teachers risking their lives, we have to understand the suicide rates in students and how, you know, those live on a similar level. And I think sometimes it feels like this administrative battle that's going on above our heads. And especially with the survey coming out, hopefully, you know, in the past we've seen not a whole lot of change comes out as a direct result of that data. So I think fingers crossed that if the results are something that people should be looking into, then hopefully administration and the board will take that into consideration when they're looking into the ideas of the steps we're going to take next. But I think in the end, it's about, just like you said, nobody knows what's going to happen. So the best thing we can do is put our heads down, do our best, try to take care of ourselves, and call it a day, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right.
Fun talking to you, Em.
So this will be up on the Elgato website. And good talking to you, Lucy. Enjoy your evening. And thanks to anybody for tuning in. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.